Okay, this is the lecture on Chapter 4 of How to Read a Book, Inspectional Reading. I didn't include a lecture on Chapter 3, which is on elementary reading, because at this point everyone should be able to read in an elementary way. And so if you do have trouble with elementary reading, please talk to me, but I won't include a lecture on it. We'll just move straight on to some more advanced stuff. So here's the outline. I'll talk to you about inspectional reading, two types of inspectional reading, on reading speeds, fixations and regressions, and the problem of comprehension. And again, this is all straightforward from Adler's book. So inspectional reading is systematic skimming. The aim is in a relatively short time to learn everything that the surface of the book can teach you in order to see if the book requires a more careful reading. Again, the question asked at this level is, what is the book about? And there are two types of inspectional reading 1 and 2. For inspectional reading 2, you're really not reading the book, you're examining the other features of the book to try to see what information you can gain before you ever go to read the book. So you're looking at the title page. Who knew? You can learn a lot about a book just by looking at the title page. You're studying the table of contents. Many people just use the table of contents to try to find the page number that they're looking for. But no, you can use the table of contents in a way that's to your advantage to help you understand what the book is about. You check the index, read the publisher's blurb, you look at the chapters that seem to be pivotal to the argument. And how do you know that? Well, through the table of contents, the titles of the chapters, the way the book is structured. 6, you can turn the pages, dipping in here and there, reading a paragraph or two, sometimes several pages in sequence to try to figure out the main point of the book. So at suggestion number 6, you actually are starting to read portions of the book. Okay, so let's go a little deeper into each of those. When you look at the title page, you're looking at the title and the subtitle. You're trying to determine the aim or the scope of the book. Let's look at our book, How to Read a Book, the Classic Guide to Intelligent Reading. Well, you can see that he's not, with the subtitle, he's not teaching you, elementary reading. He's not teaching you how to read. He's teaching you how to read in an intelligent way. You get that just from the subtitle. The Classic Guide, it tells you that it's something about its enduring nature, that this book is an authority on this matter, that it has long-standing authority. Okay, and then that helps you determine the aim or the scope of the book. A guide to intelligent reading. 2, you study the table of contents. That will help you determine the structure of the book. Notice that in Adler's book, he has parts 1, 2, 3, and 4. And part 1 is called The Dimensions of Reading. Part 2 is called The Third Level of Reading, Analytical Reading. Part 3 is called Approaches to Different Kinds of Reading Matter. Part 4 is called The Ultimate Goals of Reading. And these are giving you clues as to the structure of the book. And then you read the chapters, the chapter titles, the activity and art of reading. And he even gives you more information, active reading, the goals of reading, reading as learning, etc. So if you look through this, you'll see that he has various chapters, 3 levels of reading. Each of level 1 and levels 1 and 2 has its own chapter. He has a chapter on how to be a demanding reader. Part 2, he goes into depth on analytical reading, which is the 3rd level of reading. So you can learn so much about the book just by studying the table of contents. And then check the index. That's going to help you determine the range of topics covered, the kinds of books and authors cited, frequent and special terms. So the index for our book is labeled index, and you can find the page number if you go to the table of contents. So table of contents, it says Appendix A, recommended reading lists, Appendix B, exercises and tests at the 4 levels of reading and index. The index is on page 419. The index is really indispensable for helping you navigate the book and to figure out what are the emphases of the book. So this is what you're doing in inspectional reading. You're checking out these various aspects, and this is helping you determine whether you want to give more time to this book or not, or a book. Then you read the publisher's blurb. There is no publisher's blurb on my copy of the book where the publisher or the author gives you sort of a push for the book, a summary of the book, but you can learn a lot from the back cover of our book, where you have a statement from the New Yorker and 3 different descriptions of the aim of the book. Okay. Then 5 would be look at the chapters that seem to be pivotal to the argument, right? Look at the chapters that seem to be pivotal to the argument. And you can look through the table of contents to help you determine that, or you can kind of skim through the book, looking for keywords, italicized portions, and you can even look at the summary statements in the chapters to get an idea of what the chapters are about. And then finally 6, here you actually go through, you turn the pages, you dip in here and there where you see something that looks pivotal to the book. You read a paragraph or 2, sometimes a couple of pages. What's really great is you can find, the last pages of a chapter will typically summarize the point of the chapter. The last pages of the book will typically summarize the point of the book, right? And that's inspectional reading level 1. Really, you haven't given much time to the book, maybe 15 minutes, maybe an hour. Depends on how in-depth you want to go. And again, you're just trying to discover whether you want to give more time to the book. And if you do, you have the second level of inspectional reading. And here, you're doing a superficial reading of the entire book. Okay, a superficial reading of the entire book. So when you're tackling a difficult book for the first time, read it through without ever stopping to look up or ponder the things you don't understand right away. So you're doing a quick read, kind of not more of a skim, but not in depth. You're just kind of getting the flow of the book, the overall argument, some of the details of the argument. If there's a term you don't understand, you just skip it. If there's a passage you're having trouble with, you just skim over it and move on to the next one. Really what you're trying to do is get a little bit more detail on the gist or the main point of the book. Because if you insist on understanding everything on a page, every word on a page before you go on to the next page, you're going to get bogged down. You're not going to get very far with a book, and you're going to miss the larger point. Okay? So this superficial reading is really designed to give you an overall picture of the book. Okay, so that's inspectional reading. First, you're looking at the title page, the index, the table of contents and such, and then you're actually doing a full read-through quickly as you can, not stopping, not going back, not looking in the index, just quickly as you can to see what you can understand. That's before you do analytical reading, which is the 3rd level of reading. So what about reading speeds? How quickly should you read? Okay. Many reading programs recommend that you read books as quickly as you can, and the goal is to be ever quicker in reading a book. Well, Adler recommends something, and I really agree with him here, that the speed with which one reads a book depends on the nature and complexity of the book. The speed with which one reads a book depends on the nature and complexity of the book. The ideal is not merely to be able to read faster, but to be able to read at different speeds, to know when the different speeds are appropriate. And that is going to be book dependent. Every book should be read no more slowly than it deserves, and no more quickly than you can read it with satisfaction and comprehension. So don't, and here we're talking about maybe the analytical reading, that level of reading, satisfaction and comprehension, like you're going to need to slow down a little bit. However, if it's a book that's really superficial, maybe you shouldn't even be reading it, but maybe, definitely you should be reading it as slowly as you can to try to digest every word. Many books are hardly even worth skimming. Some should be read quickly and others should be read quite slowly. Okay, so for example, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Maybe this is a good book to read, but perhaps it should be skimmed. You just get, what are the 7 habits, and maybe get a few examples of people who have been successful based on those habits. You're probably not going to want to spend a lot of time reading that. However, you can write down those 7 habits and practice them every day. That's different. But just reading the book, it's not going to take long to really digest what that book is about, so you shouldn't spend too much time on it. Romeo and Juliet, on the other hand, a classic work, very rich, helped shape the English language. You're going to be enriched as a thinker, as a human being, by reading slowly and for understanding. Okay. Now, one word of warning, though, is your first reading of Romeo and Juliet should not be slowly. Remember, you have to do the inspectional reading first. You're doing the inspectional reading first, which is quick. You're skimming, and then you're getting the idea, and only after that, when you have the idea, will you go back and you'll read slowly, you'll look up terms, things like that. So fixations and regressions. Fixations and regressions really slow down a person's reading speed. And remember, the goal is not always to read fast, but fixations and regressions unnecessarily slow down your reading. Okay, so a fixation would be like finding a certain word and just really honing in on it. Sub-vocalizing would be another thing that would slow you down. Sub-vocalizing, that's that little voice in your head when you're trying to read a book. It reads the words inside your head, almost at an audible level. It feels, like basically when you're thinking a thought and you're thinking the thought, I want to say out loud, but it's not out loud. It's in your head. You need to break that habit. Do not sub-vocalize. That just slows you down unnecessarily. Why? Because the rate at which you can say words is way slower than the rate at which you can think. So don't fixate on words, don't sub-vocalize, and don't regress every 2 or 3 lines. These are really bad habits that slow people down unnecessarily. So regressing every 2 or 3 lines, I feel like I skipped something. I need to go back and reread that. Okay? These habits cut down on reading speed. The mind can grasp a sentence or even a paragraph at a single glance. You just have to learn how to be able to do it. All right? So how do you break these habits? You can break these habits by sweeping your hand across the page at a pace that's a little above your normal reading pace and forcing yourself to read at that higher speed. Increasing your pace, right? And if you find that you can't keep up with that pace, slow down a little bit. If you find that you can't keep up with that pace and that pace is just ever so slightly above your reading speed, maybe you're still sub-vocalizing. Once you stop sub-vocalizing, you're going to be able to read way faster. And then, once you're comfortable with that new speed, increase the swiping motion again, right? Okay. The point is not to teach you how to speed read. Like I said, Adler thinks that for some books you really just need to slow down and digest it, because it's heavy. It's going to form your mind. You know, you're really doing it to raise yourself up to a new height. Reading quickly, again, is for those books that you don't really need to spend a lot of time on, and you're wasting your time if you're reading slower than you have to. But here are ways you can increase your speed. And the goal is not just to increase your speed, the goal is to increase your understanding. Oh, one way to stop subvocalizing is try humming when you're reading. If you can't, I don't think you could hum and subvocalize at the same time. So if you get in the habit of humming while you read, you'll get out of the habit of subvocalizing, and eventually you can stop humming and you'll no longer subvocalize. Okay, there's the problem of comprehension, though. Reading quickly does not necessarily equate to comprehension. So as you practice reading quicker, you will probably increase your concentration. You have to, because you're forcing yourself to be more active in your reading, so you're concentrated at on the task at hand. But concentration does not equate to comprehension. This book, How to Read a Book, seeks to improve your comprehension. Comprehension typically requires one to read analytically, and reading analytically often cannot be done quickly. That's the end of Chapter 4. We'll move on to Chapter 5, and that'll complete Section 1 of the book.